So when we sink down and adjust our posture and get that release of the tightening, hopefully a familiar feeling to you all, that's when we've got the space to begin to move in. So sometimes I think of this in just a series of simple stages. We root down and align. We release the tightness, the stiffness in our bodies. We recognize the spaciousness, the area that we can move in, and we move in it. So everything in Tai Chi is really very much based on simple ideas like that. It's not, it can be quite a complex art, of course, with the forms and some of the exercises and things. But really those exercises and those forms, one way of looking at them would be to say that they're there to push out the boundaries of that space, to test whether we really have got the space or not. And that's why it's not uncommon in the world of Tai Chi and Qigong to find particularly very traditional teachers putting a lot of emphasis on, just say for instance, just standing, a very traditional way of starting the class is to have 20 minutes, half an hour, simply standing in what they call the Zhangzhong position. You know, the teacher may come around and correct you, but basically that's the preparation for the class to give you a chance to really feel the posture, and then you begin to move. There's other reasons that there's other aspects to the standing as well. But also this exercise is one that will enable you to get a sense for that space, to explore that space a little. Start to think about your breathing a little bit. Just have this idea of breathing down into your belly, or feeling as though your lungs are down in your belly. Expansion, moving up your body. And generally speaking, as you know, I would say that probably it's better to focus on posture rather than breathing, but it can work the other way around. I know, for instance, one very important pain management technique is to encourage people to breathe deeply. On the grounds that does two things. One, it shifts their attention away from the chronic pain that they're experiencing, but also it encourages a sense of relaxation in the body. But a lot of the time that will be done seated or laying down. So it's a different proposition when we come to standing. I'll go back to that in a few moments. Just bounce a little bit in your hips, letting your hands come up your sides and then down again. It's a bit like, you know, if you have I'm sure you have, you grab hold of a duvet or something like that, or maybe you've got a sack that you put grass cuttings in or something like that, and you grab hold of it and you sort of shake it a little bit to shake it down. It has a very similar effect on the body, actually. And then bring your hands around onto your back, lower part of your back. Press in gently around the area of the kidneys. Still bouncing up and down. And as I said before, you know, ideally it'd be the palm of your hand pressing on the kidneys, but if that's not comfortable, use the side or the back, or just do one hand and then maybe switch over and do the other. And then just let your hips settle, raise your hand a little, and back to turning. Okay, shake out. I'm going to show you a little exercise you can do to explore this thing about the breathing. I'm going to do it in a chair. You can. This is best done either seated or laying down, so that you've got some support for your back. I'm not going to do it laying down; you wouldn't see very well. But you want a chair that is going to support your back, and it's very simple. So I'll just show you what I mean. Think of 3 areas: belly, solar plexus, and chest. Possibly, you don't necessarily have to do the chest. If you place 2 hands on your belly and see if you can feel the rise and fall of your breath in the belly. If you can't, try just doing a small number deliberately, and you sort of push your back down or back, and that pushes the belly up. So that's the first stage. Second stage, put your hands on the solar plexus and do the same thing. You'll probably feel more movement here. It's not a big movement in the belly as a rule. So again, as you breathe in, feel the hands being pushed out. As you breathe out, feel them going down. Now you could move up to the chest and do the same thing here, but it's not really necessary, I don't think, because the chest is going to get involved anyway. So the final stage will be to place one hand back on your belly, and again, just try this a few times. When you breathe in, you want to feel this lower hand gets pushed out slightly before the one above it. So you feel the expansion in your belly, then in the solar plexus, then of course it will go into the chest. And on the out breath, reversing now. And that's it, really. It's very simple. If you're doing it on the ground, if you're laying, you lay on your back with your knees up, so your feet flat on the floor. And some people use books. They'll put a heavy book on the belly, a heavy book on chest, and maybe one on the solar plexus, maybe one on the chest as well. Whichever way you choose to do it, the idea is to just tune your attention into how that feels. When you come to stand up, of course, the upright posture often involves, even if we don't want it to, a kind of tightening, a pulling in of the belly. And that's why I say sitting down is best. If you do that sitting or laying, then gradually you'll get used to that, and your body will find it much more easily standing. And if you think about it, it also kind of matches those 3 areas: the lower, middle, and upper down chin. So there's plenty of tie-ins with that. So you want to get to a point where just thinking about it encourages it, and you don't have to deliberately do it. So it's best to practice it separately to begin with, and then maybe just try and integrate it with some of the movements. So coming back to standing, sinking down, and then pushing up. Now, when we do this, we feel this expansion up through the body, and then down again. So the push up is on the in-breath, expanding in the belly, and then the solar plexus, and then the chest a little. These are not big movements as a rule. Bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball. So every now and then, I would suggest when you do this and the first couple of exercises, as you begin to push up, take a breath in. And hopefully you'll be able to keep that going until you're ready to go down again. And of course, you'll just naturally breathe out at that point. do that 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times, so long as it feels comfortable. Don't hold your breath. And as and when your breathing and movement get out of sync, I would say that's probably time to switch your attention elsewhere. One thing to notice about your breathing is that the in-breath always has that sharper, clearer quality. No matter how warm it is outside, it's always warmer inside your body. So whether you're consciously doing it or not, the in-breath has this refreshing, rejuvenating quality. And one of the very early characters for the term chi, which the various aspects of course, but this is going back over 1,000 years plus, it was a character that resembled a mouse with breathing out. It was, and that led to the interpretation of the term as meaning vital breath. And of course, you know, our breathing is one of the most probably fundamental energetic reaction within the body. We breathe oxygen in. That oxygen is essential for the chemical responses that produce the energy that we use from moment to moment. You know, you can do without food for a few days and so on and so forth, but you can't go very long without the breathing. So at times, it is useful to focus on that. Now changing to the wild goose. So with the wild goose, we feel the expansion a little bit more going up into the solar plexus, following that pattern of the breathing. If you do want to try and maintain a breathing pattern, move at the speed you're breathing. Don't try and breathe at the speed that you're moving. It's better to adjust the pace of your movement than it is to artificially slow down or speed up your breathing. And if you do, in the process of doing that, start to feel a little bit lightheaded, that's not unusual. So just be careful with that, and obviously switch your attention if that does start to happen. And then change into the wild goose, sorry, not the wild goose, we're doing the wild goose, part of the clouds. And here again, we feel the expansion following that same pattern from belly up towards the shoulders. One of the things that encourages is, again, a matter of space in the body, space for our lungs to expand downwards. We often puff our chest out to breathe in, but of course, all that does is create space for what is actually the narrowest part of the lung, which is the top of they're triangular, and it's just the top part of it. Our lungs have to sort of expand downwards into the solar plexus in order to fill up properly. So now, going back to rooting down and doing these little 3 in sequence. do that one more time. So the breathing pattern for this first set of exercises is the same. You know, an in-breath on the expansion as you expand up through one side in the case of this, and a contraction on the other side. And then an expansion and a contraction. When I say don't hold the breath, actually, particularly at the bottom of the breath, between in-breath and out-breath, and between out-breath and in-breath, there's often this little slight pause. It's not a holding of the breath, though. We don't force that. Again. And again, you know, keep to the breathing only to the degree that it's comfortable. What I do with the breath is, whichever exercise I'm doing, I will check in every now and then. And I sometimes use a breathing pattern to sort of regulate the rhythm of the movement. So it's not just about the breathing, but the focusing on your breathing can be a way of engaging with some of these more subtle elements, including the energetics of the exercise. Do one more of these. Good. And then just the first and the last section of this to begin with, because of course we have an expansion and a contraction, and then when we push sideways we have an expansion and a contraction. So that fits in nicely with what I've been saying about our breathing, if that suits you. But it also means that when we put in the two middle sections, the turning, we have to be quite careful about that, because if we twist the body, then we'll be putting pressure on the belly and the solar plexus and the chest in one way or another, whilst we're also trying to expand there. And this is where posture and movement and breathing really affect each other. But again, if you want to feel that sense of that expansion up through your body, with or without a deliberate in-breath, then you're going to have to find a way to make the turn without that tension, without that pressure. So this time, adding in the turn. As you've all probably heard me say before, I think we often have a very deep misconception about our breathing. And as again, you've heard me say before, I feel that's kind of encapsulated in that catchphrase that we all use. You know, if you're in a crowded room somewhere and you're trying to squeeze past somebody, inevitably we say to them, breathe in, or somebody says the same thing to us. Problem with that is that we're making an assumption that we pull our belly in, we pull our chest in, we create more space outside as we're trying to breathe in, which is, if you think about it, the opposite of what I've just been saying we would do in Tai Chi. So the next time you're in a crowded room, if you can remember such things. Somebody says, wants to squeeze past and says, breathe in, and you'll probably flatten them against the wall or something like that. What they really should be telling them to do is to breathe out. I know it sounds a little bit silly, but it's such a common attitude, and these assumptions tie in with habits of posture and movement and breathing. Reinforce them. Do one more round. For circling palms, I mean, the breathing follows the same pattern, but it's quite a difficult exercise, I think, to coordinate with the breathing because it goes on for quite a long time. So it would have to be quite a deep in-breath and out-breath, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it tends to be a little bit longer breathing cycle than some of the other exercises, especially when we add the turn. So again, if you're following the breathing and if you're going to add the turn, just notice that this is quite a strong turn. And so we start to feel that, so not a contraction in the body, but that little bit of a pull, which again, if we're not careful, will impact on our breathing. So this is one of those exercises that I would say you should only really try to incorporate the breathing when you're really used to it, when you're at a fairly advanced stage, which I think for the three of you who are in the class would be a useful thing to do sometimes, but not all of the time. Let's switch sides. Because it just encourages a slightly stronger quality, but there's a thin line separating that stronger quality from tightening stiffness in the body. And then add in the turn. And then rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. So yeah, this one is fairly straightforward. It's an in-breath as you do this, but then as you go forward, there's a sort of pressure, not an uncomfortable pressure on the belly, sort of pushes the air out, really. It's when you come up that you want to be careful that we don't slip back into that habit of pulling the belly in, like that. And do one more. So pushing the table follows a similar pattern, of course. What you do is you breathe in and then out. Come back, breathe in and out. And you'll probably get a sense, if you're following the breathing, that your out breath is longer than your in breath when you do this. which is good because it means that there's a gradual clearing out deeper and deeper into the lungs. Now, as long as you don't take that too far, you're not going to do yourself any harm. Do one more. And stand. So that first set of exercises, the breathing pattern really is quite straightforward. And chances are that's how you're breathing anyway, because that's how our body breathes. And every now and then, if you check in with it, you'll probably find it's okay. But always, as I've said before, if your body is breathing differently, don't force it to breathe another way. You might want to look at, well, what's going on here. And some exercises, you can breathe different, you can use different breathing patterns, and that can be quite interesting because it can change the nature of the exercise. But you know, the breathing pattern for those first set of exercises is quite straightforward. But a reminder that posture is crucial here. If when we're standing, we can feel the support of the legs, we've got the alignment with the pull of gravity, we've got that sense of something a little bit supportive, a structure, a force or something within the body, all things that we've covered before. Then what we end up with is with the soft tissue. So for instance, the muscles around the belly and so on and so forth, is a good muscle tone. I'm not suggesting for a moment that the term relax is appropriate. A muscle, when it's relaxed, isn't doing anything, and they're definitely active, but what they're not is under strain. So when people sometimes say to me, when we stand up, do we pull the belly in? And the answer is no. You don't pull the belly in because that's far too strong an action for general posture. There might be appropriate in some exercises, which we don't do. They're not Tai Chi exercises, but I know some activities involve certain movements to pull the belly in. I think you find that in some styles of yoga, for instance. But that's for very specific reasons. In normal everyday activity, which Tai Chi is a mirror of, then we want these muscles active but not stiff and not tight. If somebody comes up to you and throws their arms around you and squeezes you, say, "Get up, I can't breathe." So you wouldn't want somebody to do that to you. Don't do it to yourself. So this is where structure and posture are actually very, very important, very influential on the breathing. Now, we're going to go into bear play. So here we find a slightly different way of using the breath in, where it still follows the same pattern. So start by going up and down with an in-breath and an out-breath every now and then, and rolling your elbows over. Starting to turn. Do that a couple of times before we go into the full exercise. Then releasing your arms, and you could almost imagine breathing out through the palm of your hand. And this is an image that we use sometimes, and that we'll use potentially in some of the exercises from the bow stance. this is, again, this is a reflection of that idea of the bellows. When you use the bellows, not that we do these days very much, it's something you pump a fire up with. You expand the bag. You pull the handles out. You draw the air in, and then on the contraction, you're pushing the air out in a certain direction, quite a focused direction. One thing which an attention to your breathing can be good for is to really give you a focus of attention. It's one of those things, one of those elements that we like to focus on. And so just being aware of your breath can actually help to create that sense of space within your awareness, to help to just draw your attention away from your thoughts. And I mentioned earlier the possibility of using the breathing techniques in the management of chronic pain. Then we're going to change to hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. So assuming you're following the breathing, here you breathe out, you breathe in here, that fills the body, and then you breathe out through your hand as you hit the ball, which of course is quite a natural thing to do. Breathing in right at the end, and then breathing out here, so you get to here, that's open there. Now you can breathe in, you breathe out as you move across, and as the arm rises right at the end, you breathe in and down. So out breath, that's when you'll be really giving the power to the hand. And then in breath, because you get a little bit of expansion in the chest when you do that. Again, if you're finding that you're breathing slightly differently, that's fine. But try and have a sense of how you're breathing and how that's relating to the movement. If you are following the pattern as I suggested, part of the feeling here is when I get to here, I sort of finish the out breath and then I kind of open the body up to breathe in. That's exaggerated, by the way. And then breathe out. And then breathing in as I extend the arm forwards and breathe out. So the out breath, you could almost argue the out breath has come from this leg. Breathe in and then it's out as you go through it. One more. Okay. 1 foot forwards. There is no particular breathing pattern with this individual exercise. You could do it in either direction. What it can do is help to regulate the movement. You know, I want in breath and out breath. Most of the exercise will be even, although not always, as we've noticed. And so if we say, for instance, we're to breathe out going forwards, in going back, then you'll find that it helps to just regulate the transfer of your weight. So forward and backward transfer are equal in length. Raising your toes and your heel. And then stepping in. Another interesting thing here is to just imagine that you're breathing up through your leg when your weight's in one leg. And that's something that, you know, it's obviously you're not doing that. But again, it's that way of focusing mind and body into the leg that's supporting you and the contact with the ground. And then on the other side. So working with the breath in this way, we begin to use a certain amount of visualization with that. We breathe in through the leg. Sometimes with groups, I've got them to pause and take a deliberate breath in. We'll do that in a moment. Let's go into the standard, raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. Now, take a step forwards or backwards, whichever was convenient for you. Go forwards, rest on that leg, and use that image of breathing up through your leg and then out through your leg, and then take the step. So you plant the foot down, you press in, you move the weight forwards, you breathe in through the leg, you breathe out through the leg, and then you take the step as normal. And in that time, when you're taking the imaginary breath through your leg, feel how your body responds to that. You're just taking a little bit of extra time to make sure of your posture, really. And then do the same thing in the other direction. So sometimes I will use this as a way of just slowing down the walking and in a way to take the emphasis away from taking the step and put more emphasis on relating to the ground via the supporting leg. So your breathing has the potential to shake out. Breathing has the potential to help you to focus your attention as well. It's one of the things that we would gather our attention about. Now, 1 foot forwards. So sink the weight back and turn your hands palm out. And again, that helps to open the chest right at the top of the chest. So we would expect, therefore, given what I've been saying, that this would be associated with an in-breath. So if you want to follow the breathing, breathe in and then breathe out as you go forwards. Breathing in, filling up the whole of the upper body. And that may not be particularly significant to this exercise, but you'll see in a few moments that it can be quite an interesting lead-in to some aspects of the other movements. So one of the classes last, I can't remember which class actually, but I think I was talking about the idea that space in our mind, in our bodies and in our minds that we move through is something that we begin to get a sense of projecting out from us, like a sort of bubble surrounding us, because of course we're moving not just through the inner environment, through the inner landscape, but through the landscape around us. So it's reasonable to expect that we move more easily when there's space around us. And we get a sense of putting our awareness, if you like, projecting into that space. So when we change to fisherman cast the net, now what we're going to do is you imagine breathing out again through your arms and your fingers into that space around you. So that the sense of the movement, the sense of our own particular boundaries and so on and so forth, the sense of the flow of the energy actually begins to go beyond our actual skin. Not far beyond. I suppose it kind of relates to what some people might refer to as the aura, although that's not necessarily something that is talked about in Chinese energetics, as far as I know. It's also interestingly something that you would be taught about in self-defense, that some of these ideas are about being aware of that immediate space around you and who or what might be in that space. And then change into pushing a wave. Good. So those three movements with your other foot forwards. Bird folds its wings. and fisherman cast the net. And then pushing away. Okay, check out. And come back to the parallel stance. Once again, going into this sinking and apologies for the background. I don't know where that's coming from. So we follow the breathing, we fill and we empty. Now imagine you're holding on to a ball, putting your arms, and the ball fills up and empties. Gradually getting a little bit bigger as you feel expansion going up through your body. And then make it a large circle. Almost as though you were just reaching out and gathering in energy or the air, and then coming down into the belly, into the lower down chest. Again, notice the quality of the in-breath. And again, we can add up an image to this visualization. The in-breath is likened to a spring mist, you know, sharp, clear, revitalizing quality, like those spring mornings when the promise of the warmer day and the energy of the morning, the growth. The out-breath is likened to the autumn fog, sort of denser, murkier, grayer, more stagnant. And that image, that contrast, is part of what we want to experience within the body, a kind of rejuvenation. Now we add a second circle, a smaller circle, an inner circle. So here we feel the expansion from the belly, but it's very much within the body. We're not concerned with the space around us. We go from inner to outer. So we use the outer circle, looking for that kind of fresher quality. You don't have to keep to a breathing pattern, but every now and then try and take a breath in there. And then as we do the inner circle, we want to really feel that sharper, fresher quality spreading through the body. Finally, in that in a circle, thinking back, I was talking earlier about imagining breathing through your legs. You might want to imagine being able to breathe into particular parts of the body. And that can be particularly useful when you're trying to work with an area that feels a bit blocked or tight. You imagine breathing in that sharper, more tingly feeling, breathing out the stagnation. But you could also do it just with a simple, what is referred to as a body scan. So for instance, this time when you do the inner circle, imagine breathing up through your feet, into your hips and your belly, breathing out through the belly. And then next time you breathe, imagine sort of like breathing into your belly, solar plexus and chest, the torso, and you can go into as much detail as you wish. And breathing out, releasing the stagnant feeling. Gathering in again. And then breathing into your arms, your hands, your head. Feeling that sharper feeling and breathing out. You can either repeat that or focus on particular parts of the body, go into more detail with the body scan. There's all sorts of ways that you can work creatively with this idea. Just a couple more rounds this exercise. And stand. Give your legs a little shake. So rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. One shoulder, your arms. Side. Back. And then around your hips. Legs. Nice on your belly. And the upper part of your chest. The last exercise, by the way, is called Sun and Moon. So called because the light of the moon is a reflection of the sun's. And again, in Chinese and energetics, inner and outer are connected. And sometimes the circulation of energy within the body is seen as being a reflection of the movement of energy through our wider environment. We're not seen as being isolated or separate from that. So these are things that I think are quite interesting. Once we've gotten to know the exercises, this has not been a beginner's class. So just take from it whatever is useful. Personally, I find the idea of sort of like a projection outwards to be very useful and indeed important. We're not islands. We're not cut off from the environment around us. I remember many years ago working with my second main teacher, a guy called Steve Bushell. I first met him in a seminar he was leading in London, in one of the London colleges, where they'd held a concert the night before, and the floor was sticky, and you know, you could smell the stale beer and cigarette smoke. It was years ago. It wasn't the most, you know, you walk into something like that to do Tai Chi, it's not the most conducive of environments. And Steve was always very up for the task. And one of the first things he said was, you know, kind of like, yes, it's a bit smelly in here, but remember, with Tai Chi, we actually influence our environment. We create the energy for the environment around us, or words to that effect. I think it was one of the reasons I stayed with him for as long as I did before he stopped teaching eventually. But if he was still teaching, I'd probably still be training with him now, because he had that kind of approach to things. So embrace tiger, return to mountain, sinking down. If you want the breathing pattern for this, it's in breath as you push up. There's the expansion. Out breath as you draw in. In breath as you continue to draw in, and then the out breath as you settle. So again, the breath might be something that helps you with this drawing into your center, drawing into the root, the return to the mountain. One more time. And stand. Lovely, thank you. So again, that was just not